Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system. If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served. Hi, I'm Detective Dave. I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood. So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished. From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
And welcome back to Little Cuts, our weekly mini-sode where we dig into the things that we've been watching recently. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth. This week we are talking about a found footage film festival. Say that 5 times fast. Kaiju. Tom Cruise. And of course, Hammer horror.
And boy, I'm curious to hear your thoughts about our Hammer horror. But before we do get to that one, I want to know about your found footage festival because it seemed like it was a success.
Okay, it was awesome. So this year was the 3rd year for the Unnamed Footage Festival, which takes place typically every year in San Francisco. It's run by these amazing people, Rusty, Oksana, Madeline, Clark. They are a group of amazing people who are as obsessed with found footage as I am. And so this year it was a live.
Is that possible?
Yeah, apparently. I found them. I found my people.
You found your people?
I found my people. There are a few of us, but we are strong. So this year, instead of doing an in-person festival, they did a 24-hour live stream. And I got to be a part of the live stream. I got to do some Q&As for them with Rob Grant, who was like our first guest on the show. So that was cool.
Our very first guest.
I know. And then I got to talk to 2 other directors. I got to talk to Jillian Wallace Horvat, who did I Blame Society, which came out this year. And then Chris Power, who did a found footage movie called Long Pigs. So that was really cool. What was even cooler was that I got to see some fucking cool ass found footage movies because they do found footage movies, not just recent releases, but movies that just don't play anywhere else. Like they've played Murder, Death, Koreatown a couple times. It's films that you wouldn't really have access to, and they were streaming them. So there was some weird shit, there was some awesome shit, and there were some films that I really, really fell in love with. So let me pull up the news. So there's 2 that I really wanted to talk about. So the first one I wanted to talk about is called 1974, the possession of Altair.
I saw you either talk about that on Twitter or I saw your letter. You might have written something on Letterboxd, but I was expecting that one to be one that you were going to talk about.
Well, the Letterboxd review is just this absolutely rules, and then I tweeted about it on right after I saw it. But the synopsis of this film is a newlywed couple disappears in 1974, and then their 8mm tapes reveal one of the most horrifying events in Mexican history. It is a Mexican found footage film from 2016. It is not streaming anywhere, so that was why it was even cooler to watch it at the festival because it's not anywhere.
I went to go look for it after you were tweeting about it. And
I was like, fuck, I want to watch this again. And I really loved it. I don't want to spoil it, but it has some of the freakiest shots of found footage that I've seen.
Really? And
yes, like there's particularly a scene where, this isn't actually a spoiler, this guy is sitting on the steps, a door has shut in his face, and like his camera is down and it's recording his face like panicking, and behind him it's almost like Hereditary. You see like a faint figure kind of walk out of the shadow but not all the way out, and then fade back into the shadow, so he never acknowledges it but you just see it in the background. Like one of my favorite found footage things when like something small like that happens, but it's so eerie. So I really, really enjoyed that movie, and I don't think I would have had the opportunity to see it as easily as I was able to at the festival.
And that was shot in 8mm, wasn't it?
Yes, it was shot completely in 8mm. So it looked, I mean, like I can't even imagine how difficult that was to shoot that in 8mm, like shoot so much in 8mm. I know that 8mm is absolutely is like really hard to cut and to edit and to work with, especially in like 2016 when you could just skip it. But it really does give it that like, it has that vintage feel. Like everyone looks like they're just in the from the 70s. And it also has one of the most effective uses of the flashlight in the forest.
Ooh.
That like I really love that from Blair Witch, and I think a lot of movies do that, but this one does it really, really well. It has that same vibe as Blair Witch with like that use of the flashlight in the woods, and I absolutely loved it. It was so good.
Yeah, after you tweeted about it, I did go look it up on IMDb, and that's when I was like, ooh, 8mm. I love that kind of attention to detail. You don't really see a lot of found footage shot from an earlier time period.
Yes.
I guess what I was thinking about in particular was a lot of films today have that very crispness to them because they're all done in 4K, HDR, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of makes it feel safe, whereas like watching an 8mm, even though you know that it's a movie, it still kind of gives it that dangerous feel to it.
I agree, and again, it does feel like I found this in a box in my parents' basement.
Yeah,
like I found this somewhere. It really is found footage, like that, having that kind of old school physical feel, like the graininess of the footage. You can like feel it. It feels like, oh, no one would make a movie like this would purposely make a movie on something like this. Mm-hmm. So it does give it that spookier vibe. So, and then the main actress who plays Altair, she has some of the best physicality acting. Like, you think about the way bodies are contort in other possession films like The Last Exorcism, and she's on that level, if not better.
Wow.
If not better, I think. She's able to do some really creepy shit with her eyes.
I want to see this.
I know.
And that's coming from me.
I know. It is coming. It's very interesting, but coming from you. But I really enjoyed it. And then the other one that I saw that is like very good, but on the other end of the spectrum, is called Descent into Darkness, My European Nightmare.
Oh.
And my review on Letterboxd was, so it's directed by this guy, Raphael Tchaikovsky, and the whole film, the conceit is that a journalist I don't even consider him a journalist, an amateur filmmaker from Eastern Europe arrives in Paris to start a tour of European capitals. His intention is to make a documentary about the European dream, but between the fascination and difficulty of adaptation, Sergei struggles to complete his project, and his expedition drives him into a devastating state of madness. And when I say devastating state of madness, like this movie goes to places that I would never have expected. Like it kept being called in the live chat, it's like dark Borat. Like Borat does horror.
Oh. Because
this guy, a lot of the things, like when he goes to a lot of parties and gets wasted and says stupid shit, he did that for real. Like he acted like it was like very quasi like Borat, and he kind of looks like Borat. Like he has like the curly hair and a thick Eastern European accent and a mustache. It's much, much darker than Borat, but it's really hard to watch, but it's really good. And apparently this guy had to check himself into an inpatient program for a bit after making it, because he's a performance artist by trade. So he's used to doing weird shit. Like, that's his thing, is to make kind of like pretty intense art like that. But I think this was it was too dark for him. Like if you watch it, you're like, yeah.
Did you like it then?
I did. I really liked it. I really, really liked it. I think it's one of those examples of how you can do found footage in like a really creepy, horrifying way that doesn't necessarily feel like snuff.
Okay.
I think that's a hard line. And I mean, it's a film I probably don't want to watch again, but I really enjoyed it. So.
And that looks like it is available.
Yeah, that one is. It's a different cut, I think, than the one. I don't know how different, because this is the first one I've ever seen, but I think this is a film that has like several different cuts. And the one that we watched, I don't think has been anywhere. But I don't think they're I don't think they're really that different. I think I don't see how they could be that different. So And there were a bunch of other great films and shorts, but those were the two that I really like stuck out to me as really amazing parts of the festival and really show like the really awesome range of films that these programmers get and look for. Like they look all over the world. They all types of directors, new, old, whatever, and second screen, faux documentary, found footage proper. Like it's really, really impressive. And so I'm so happy to be involved. I'm hoping to be involved next year. And yeah. So that's that Unnamed Footage Festival. Follow them on all of the things. And I'm on their YouTube channel if you want to watch me talk to Rob Grant and Mike Kovac about Fake Blood.
Hell yeah, people do.
Anyway,
I love Rob.
Oh my God, he's such a goofball. I love him. And like so talking about that movie that's like kind of serious. He's just like, yeah. Got kind of crazy. I was like, you think? Anyway, so that is what I spent most of my Friday and Saturday doing last week. Terry, you have some cool things to chat about, including giant monsters. So what have you been enjoying?
Okay, so I realized that I had not seen the Michael Dougherty Godzilla King of the Monsters movie. And with Godzilla vs. Kong, it's out now. I was like, I should probably watch that before this one since, they're building like a continuation. Didn't really care for it as much as I was hoping to. Mothra is adorable. I love her.
A girlfriend.
I do think the Dougherty seemed to be like consumed by the corporate franchise-ness of the whole thing. I didn't really see any of the kind of character that he brought to Krampus and Trick or Treat. It felt a little too... I mean, and this is like a long conversation that I feel like we could spiral into. So I'm just going to just say it didn't work for me. Although I loved the finale, but it was the finale that made me actually want to revisit War of the Worlds from 2005, the Tom Cruise movie, because there was a shot in Godzilla King of the Monsters where Madison, played by Millie Bobby Brown, is like running while there's destruction happening behind her, and she hides in her house. And it like triggered a memory of like seeing War of the Worlds and reminding myself just like how I don't think I have seen a disaster movie as powerful as War of the Worlds is. And so I was like, I really want to watch that. So I ended up watching that movie back to back with Godzilla King of the Monsters. And let me tell you,
what an interesting double feature.
Yeah. War of the Worlds, I don't think it might be my favorite Steven Spielberg movie.
No way, really?
Just because like watching it this time, I hadn't seen it since the movie theaters back when it was released in 2005. And I remember liking it back then, but not being too enamored with it. But let me tell you, on rewatch, I got emotional. I started crying.
It's scary as shit.
Yes, it's scary as shit, and it's unrelenting.
Fucking scary. It's unrelenting. It's unrelenting.
The pacing of it, where like I was just like so enamored with how fast it was moving, because it's like, Tom Cruise he runs over to this pit. The screecher's out of the pit. Now he's covered with ash of dead people. Now he's like racing in his car. Now his daughter is seeing a river full of dead bodies just pouring down it. Now their cars are getting broken into by the worst of humanity that are trying to steal their car. Now people are getting shot. Now they're on like the boat, and it's getting like this movie just keeps moving and moving and moving and throwing more and more nihilism. I think this is a very nihilistic movie.
It is.
I even think the ending is not very hopeful, because it's not mankind that saves the day. It's the fact that Earth is like, hey, I have disease. Yep. You're not ready for it. You're dead. So even at the very end, we are denied some kind of catharsis, which is the reason why I don't think I liked it in the theaters when I first saw it. Because I was hoping for a kind of rah-rah. But I think this movie, I think it is tackling 9/11 fears in a way that watching it now, like removed from that situation, brought me back to that kind of feeling of fear and unknown, that the world was coming to an end potentially. And so like I was watching this and I was watching some of the reactions, particularly the fact that it puts us in Dakota Fanning's character's like perspective through most of the movie.
Oh yeah.
This movie brought me back to that feeling of like there's no one that's going to be able to save us. And it made me fucking emotional, and I was not prepared for that. This movie, man, like I I think we could do a whole episode on this movie. This movie is fucking phenomenal.
Well, and like, okay, speaking of Scarred for Life, so this movie came out when I was 12.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was 12 and I saw all the commercials for it, and like it was one of those, like, the ads were like really scary because the sound that they make, like the big trumpeting sound. That sound from the trailer freaked me out, and like it was one of these movies that I really wanted to see, but I was too scared to watch it, so I became obsessed with it. And so I very distinctly remember that my parents went on a date night to go see it, and I was at my grandparents, and when they came home to get us, I said, "Oh my God, how was it? Tell me everything." And my stepdad, like, my mom got so mad at him. He's like, "Oh yeah, there's a point where like they grind up people and they use them to like make roots and plant them." And I was like, what? I was so upset.
Because
he was like, "Oh yeah,
that.
like there's roots full of people and like they're just like spraying them on the ground." And I was like, what the fuck? And so like my small head couldn't embrace it. And then when I finally saw it, it still scared the shit out of me. Like, I will stand by that movie being very terrifying.
It's
and
scary.
Very gross. Like, it's gory.
It's incredibly gory. And that moment, I had completely forgotten about the fact that these things are like terraforming the planet with the blood of humans. Like, that moment, I was like, holy shit.
Oh my God. Like, when he walks up the hill and sees it, like everything is covered in the red, and he picks up he picks up one of the roots and there's a finger in it, I think is what it is, or something. Like, he picks it up and he's like, "Oh, that's a fucking person." Like, anyway,
the fact this movie was PG-13, like, it
right?
is it's the most mean movie I think Spielberg has ever created. It is a mean, nasty little number that it has skyrocketed my appreciation for.
I'm going to rewatch it now that you brought that up, because I do remember really enjoying it.
And the CG like holds up. Like, you can kind of
good.
You can kind of see some of the seams where it's like obviously a screen that they're acting in front of, but like, I don't know, it has some depth in it that I think a lot of big picture movies today could probably take a cue from.
I think I also learned what peach schnapps were in that movie.
Oh God. That whole
That's all
scene.
the guy had. Well, that's a whole other situation. But I remember being like, "What's peach schnapps? Why are these just so weird? Like, these very weird small memories are coming back from this movie." But yeah, I was like, "The fuck are peach schnapps?"
Yeah. I think we should dig into that movie because there's a lot to talk about.
Should
Patreon?
Patreon? Anyway, yeah, we definitely should. I would absolutely love to dig into that movie.
But the reason, that was not the reason I watched Godzilla, because I watched Godzilla to prepare myself for Godzilla versus Kong, which I also watched today, but right before we started recording, and I really enjoyed it. I'm not going to say too much because I know you haven't seen it yet.
I haven't watched it yet.
But I'll say that Kong feels like the main character. Loved his journey.
Fine.
Loved that people were complaining about the human story, but it worked for me here because they were periphery to the main story. Their purpose was to discover things that were related to that central conflict of Kong and Godzilla. So it worked for me. Love that it continues to explore Hollow Earth theory.
Oh my God.
And I loved the neon final battle. It's just like, it was so good. It was so good. Unlike Doherty, it had a lot of character in this.
It's Wingard. Isn't that awesome? Oh, I love that these indie boys are getting movies. Sorry that I liked King of the Monsters, but like I also my partner Steve, that everyone probably knows who he is at this point, but Steve didn't really enjoy King of the Monsters. We rewatched it recently because we were doing like a rewatch of all the more recent like Universal Monsters movies, or Monsterverse movies. And he liked it better on second watch. But I think our favorite is Kong Skull Island. If we're going to talk about like ranking and stuff, Kong Skull Island was our favorite of these four. So, did you see Kong Skull Island?
Yes, I liked Skull Island. I have I need to revisit it because I haven't seen it since the theater, but I have a soft spot for Godzilla just because it really leaned into the awe-inspiringness of him. Yeah. Like, he has never felt larger than life than in that movie for me. Yes, he's like huge in this movie. Yes, he's knocking over buildings, yada, yada, yada. But in terms of like spectacle, the shots of like him finally being revealed and you realizing how massive he is, just like that awe-inspiringness of it, I I think it's something that has never been tapped into in any of the, at least American.
I was going to say, have you seen Shin Godzilla? Because it does in that one, but that is one of the Japanese versions of it.
I have not, but that's the thing I put out on Twitter, and so I'm curious if any listeners or if you have any inputs. I am not familiar with the Japanese side of Godzilla because my Godzilla knowledge, I think I might have seen the first one when I was a kid, maybe. I'm not really sure. I know I've seen one of them at one point, but I remember nothing about it. So my entry point has always been either the Matthew Broderick one or the 2014 Godzilla, and then this new American incarnation of it. So I want to know where I should start. If I should start from the very beginning or if I should just pick and choose.
So there isn't really any continuity.
Okay.
That I think is necessary. So it's split up into eras so there's like the Showa era, which is in the 60s. There's the Heisei era, and then the Showa era, the Heisei era, and then the Millennium era. So there's like three kind of distinct styles broken up across the decades, and the Showa era is, God damn it, the Showa era is where you like introduced to all the characters. So that's a good place to kind of get a sense of like Mothra and Ghidorah and Godzilla and Kong. Those are all classics. Like those are all worth watching, and they're all on HBO Max or Criterion. Almost all of the Showa era Godzillas are on Criterion. So I would watch those. I would also highly recommend Godzilla versus Hedorah, which he fights a giant pollution monster.
Oh.
And then it has a bunch of forms where it transforms into the giant flying monster plane, which is very good. But Shin Godzilla is my big recommendation.
Yeah, I really want to watch that one. And that's you tweeting about it and me seeing all of the like GIFs and pictures and stuff of the creature from that, and seeing just like, I know that one is like really highly revered, and I wasn't sure if that's where I should start, not knowing anything about Godzilla outside of the American Monsterverse.
Yeah. So what I would do, because I just shameless plug, I just wrote an article about Shin Godzilla and like why it is such an important film in terms of why it kind of harkens back to the original nihilism of the original. So I would watch the original one and then maybe Shin Godzilla to kind of get a sense of how they kind of bookend the scariness of Godzilla, and then the rest of them are all they're a little bit more silly and they're a little bit more fun.
Because wasn't Shin Godzilla, wasn't that directed by the Neon Genesis?
Hideki Anno, Neon Genesis Evangelion.
I never know how to pronounce that last word, so I just call it Neon Genesis.
Yeah, Neon Genesis Evangelion, NGE, Evangelion,
I've seen that.
Whatever. You have?
Oh, yeah.
Get ready for that kind of tone of just despair. There are not sad teenagers in it, though, just sad bureaucrats.
All right.
But yeah, I love Shin Godzilla is probably my favorite.
Okay. That's the one that I really want to see. I never know if, like, I mean, you know, a lot of times the reason why a new movie works really well is because it has that 60 years of history behind it. So that's why I was like, do I jump in with that one or do I work my way up to it? And that was, you know, basically my big. They're
all so different. And like, everyone, like Godzilla stans scare the shit out of me. But because like they've come for me before. Because anyway, everyone has a lot of very strong opinions. But in my opinion, there is no right way. Or there is no wrong way to enjoy Godzilla.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
Cool. Now, like, transitioning, like, way the far fuck away from Godzilla, what Hammer Horror are we talking about today, Mary Beth?
We're unwrapping the 1959 Mummy. I stole your joke from last week.
Hey, if it works, use it.
But yeah, this is the Mummy.
Yes. What did you think?
I hate that I enjoyed it because it's so bad, like in terms of like colonialism and like brown face. But this is an interesting movie that does kind of speak to issues of colonialism and like the British coming to Egypt and saying like, this is ours. But boy, oh boy, the prevalent brown face that was in early horror cinema is just on display in this film.
Yeah.
Guys, Christopher Lee is in brown face. He plays the mummy. So, like, sometimes he's the mummy, and then sometimes he is an Egyptian pharaoh who is painted brown.
Yeah. There's a lot of that going on in this movie. And,
yeah, an evil Egyptian.
Well, yeah, and the evil Egyptian's played by someone from Greece. He's Greek.
Close enough, right? God.
And I was looking into the career of George Pastel, who played the Egyptian guy that wants to take revenge, and he carved out a career as villains in film and in television because of his like exotic looks.
Oh,
so
fuck
like
me. Come on.
They used him to play a lot of Egyptian characters.
Of course they did. You're a little bit darker than white. All right. We can enhance it a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well,
so that's frustrating.
Yeah. I wanted to get that out of the way just to talk about it because that is a big problem in this movie.
Oh no, I was like when I realized that Christopher Lee was playing the mummy / Karis, and then I was like, wait, if they're doing a / Karis, and that means they probably are doing flashbacks, and that means he's oh god,
oh no.
And it's an unfortunate thing that continues till today. It's just nowadays they don't paint people brown, but they still have white people replacing it, like Gods of Egypt. I mean, how many of these big spectacle movies, Russell Crowe is the lead each guy from Egypt? Like, at what point were Egyptians white? Because that seems to be all that Hollywood wants to cast, and it started here. You know?
Yeah, I know. It's that, and that's a big part, like difficult part of going back in horror history and realizing that, that not only are people of color the other, but they don't cast people of color in those roles. It's a white person that is putting on a costume. And so it's such a weird thing because like you'll see sometimes, I think in this movie there were people of color as like the background actors. So it's like they have people of color, and it's so frustrating that it took so long and continues. It's still going on where it's like people of color, like we're just not going to think about them for these roles because they were and like that happens. Like think of Ghost in the Shell where they just cast Scarlett Johansson when it is a very Japanese movie and they didn't cast an Asian woman. Like that's only one of like the millions of examples. But yeah, it is just like, y'all, Christopher Lee just looks like a white dude in brown face paint. Like, what are we doing? And like with shitty eyeliner.
Ugh, girl.
But besides that
aside, there was a lot in this that I did love.
I did really enjoy it.
And we're talking about, going back through horror history and seeing kind of like the birth. What I realized watching this movie was how much the unstoppable killer that we would see in 80s movies like Friday the 13th, you see him in The Mummy. The way The Mummy moves,
right? His
lumbering gait, him breaking through the front doors and going to choke his victims. Like it reminded me so much of watching the slasher movies from the 80s with Jason and stuff. It's interesting to see that kind of connection here.
It really is. I didn't think about the slasher. I just thought about the physicality of the mummy and how it was so scary because he really, the mummy is just covered in like dirty wrappings because he's been dead and he it doesn't necessarily look that terrifying, but the way that Christopher Lee moves and the way his eyes are shown is really haunting. And that, like you said, that gait, that kind of like slow but almost fast gait and the strength that he has makes him a really terrifying creature, which I love. Like, and that's why slashers are so interesting because like slashers are people. Most of the time, like slasher villains are just people and they're like, oh shit, scary. Reducing decades of a genre into one sentence there, but there is something so terrifying about someone that doesn't seem that intimidating, and then you're like, it's like
he's not
gonna stop. Like you can't stop him.
They shoot him. And I thought that effect was really great.
Yes.
I'm assuming they use squibs and it just explodes out of his body, but like he doesn't stop. He just keeps coming, and it's like there's no way of stopping him. And I thought that the scene where Peter Cushing, he played John Banning, where John Banning's father is in the padded room and he's breaking through the gate.
Yes.
Like that scene is actually pretty intense. I think till even today.
When he kicks in the window, I was like, absolutely the fuck not. Like when he's like, is it the window? Like through
yeah, it's like a window and then there's like a grate and he's like tearing through that grate.
Like, I know. I was like, fuck that shit. Like that is not allowed. Like that was really freaky. His like foot was dangling down and like, because I don't know, you're not used to seeing monsters like that, like actually having that strength to pull things out and like squeezing through windows. You know what I mean? Like there's something even scarier about a creature that has that level of intelligence that can like burst through things and like squeeze through spaces, if you know. So
you mentioned earlier kind of the idea of colonialism. I did think that was an interesting angle to this. There's a conversation where John Banning is talking to Mehmet Bey, I think is his name. And, you know, he's basically equating archaeology to colonialism because you're raiding these tombs, you're taking the stuff and you're taking it away from the people who have that history and you're putting them in museums in Britain. And there's like a whole history of Britain also being colonialism. Yeah. And so you take a look at that idea of it and there's some interesting things that it's bringing up. It's unfortunate that, you know, Peter Cushing's character is presented as the hero of it because I honestly, I was on the side of Mehmet.
Well, exactly. And that's the, like this whole thing where it's like, oh yeah, they found this tomb and then all of a sudden like they claimed it as their own, but they didn't understand the history of the things that they were taking and like the consequences of those actions. But of course, the Egyptian guy is still the evil character who wears like the stereotypical fez and is like, I will get revenge with like my like with my creature of the Orient, like that kind of like mystic, you know, stereotypical representation of the other. But it is all about how British people come in and they say, all right, like, and there's obviously slaves essentially in the background doing all the work for them.
Yep.
And it is about that. But, you know, we're not going to talk about that because England is like, no, it's fine. But they still have problems. Like there's so many things they stole from ancient Greece. They just take these things like it's our own without recognizing cultural significance and understanding like these things are actually a really crucial part of cultural identity for a lot of people around the world. And they're just like, no, it's fun to look at a museum. And it's like, no, but actually like these have really crucial significance to these people and that you're just charging people to come look at it behind a glass box.
Right. And it's not as if it's in a museum somewhere in Egypt, you know, it's not they're people making money off of their cultural heritage. It's some white dude that has basically stolen someone's antique and is now parading it around in their British museum. Like there's interesting things here and the movie does bring them up. It doesn't really interrogate them enough, but as we've discovered with a lot of Hammer films, it has these ideas and then it doesn't really interrogate them because it's more interested in entertaining than it is critiquing things, I think. But yeah, other than that, like the flashbacks went on a little too long.
Yeah, they definitely did go on a little bit too long.
A little
but
too
like,
much exposition.
The spectacle and the costuming was really cool. Like I did like that they did the flashbacks. They did go on for a little too long. But
what I would like though, and I took this note as I was watching the forbidden love between Karis and what's her name, Ananka. Is that I would like to see a new Mummy movie in which the forbidden love is between like the emperor and his male priest.
Oh my God, please. I want a gay Mummy movie.
Cause like it sent me down a mini rabbit hole as things do happen sometimes. And there was a, potentially one of the very first, instances of same-sex documented between two Egyptian men that were painted with their noses touching in like a very and so like I was thinking this would be a really kind of cool way to reinvent this story for the 21st century as a long lost queer narrative. I would love to see. Yes,
I want that. All of the Universal monster movies, but make them queer. But like explicitly queer.
Explicit,
explicitly queer. So that about does it for this week's minisode. But before we wrap up, who are we talking to on Monday?
Oh, Mary Beth. We are talking with Elsa Kephart. She is the co-writer and director of the Killer Pants movie Slacks, which is on Shudder, and it is great and fun and
oh my God,
such a good satire. And I hope you guys have seen it, but if not, make sure you watch it this weekend.
And we're talking to her about The Exorcist 2, The Heretic.
Whew.
Yeah, folks, get ready. It's quite a conversation. It's a fun one, obviously, but that's a movie that is not the best. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. And then next Friday, Mary Beth, what are we going to watch for our Hammer
we are
journey?
Going to watch Bette Davis in The Nanny from 1965. I'm excited.
I am too. This one was recommended a couple times, I think, on Twitter, and it just sounds kind of bonkers in the best way.
All of these movies are just bonkers. They're amazing. So listeners, you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. Have you seen a film that we watched and talked about this week and have thoughts? Do you have suggestions for movies that we should be talking about?
Do you have a favorite Godzilla movie that I should watch?
Yes, send Terry all of your Godzilla movie recs. And don't tell me I'm wrong about how to watch Godzilla. I don't think my heart could handle it. Send us
don't do that in general. That's just rude.
True. Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com or reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm at Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, make sure to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe. Somehow, after me requesting a review last week, we actually ended up losing a review. So we're at 78 now.
Fuck? So
come on, people.
What the fuck? I rescind my digital kiss I gave you all last week.
Yeah.
Thank you. Who am I thanking again? Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Please stream Neon Vampires. Neon Vampires?
Oh, yeah. It's out.
Yeah.
Neon Vampires.
Stream it. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Please stay safe out there. But most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.